Welcome, everybody, and welcome to the Athens Democracy Forum. We're delighted to have you here. It's the first event which shows the importance that business has to play in fostering democracy. We've come up with one of the four programmatic pillars of our foundation. The four pillars are technology, migration, climate, and business. And we were inspired enough to sit down and pen a charter, the Athenian Charter for Business. And that's what we're here to talk about. So over to you, Anthony.
Thank you. We will be joined by Yannis Harizopoulos, a partner of McKinsey, and Christos Ioannou, an economic counselor of the Federation of Greek Industries, SEV. Myself, I'm the vice chair of the board of governors of the foundation. We believe at the foundation that we've reached a stage where there's the sense of urgency. We don't have the time to wait because there is a problem that we have to solve quite quickly. And that is the problem of inequality. Consequently, our basic position, and I will stop here and allow my co-panelists to come in, our basic position is that the new charter is needed. Why? Because it says very, very simply that all actions by a company, no matter whether they concern climate, no matter whether they concern more generally the environment, no matter whether they concern the issue of local integration for migrants and refugees, all actions must have as an end impact the aim of reducing inequality. COVID has shown that because of inequality, certain large portions of the population suffer much more than others. So this is our basic premise. This is the one in which we want to concentrate. And on this, I will stop. I've talked too much, and I will open the discussion.
Many argue that the reason we see populism, the reason we see things happening around is because the social contract is not being delivered fully by the governments. And it's very important that companies and businesses need to play a role into shaping the social contract, the relationship between the government and the people, the relationship between the people and the businesses. In my view, there are 6 parts, right, that companies need to really put together in order to kind of rewrite and reoffer the social contract. The first one is treat workers fairly, and this is about wages, living wages, fair wages, and meeting health and safety standards, not only for physical health, but also for mental health. The second part of the social contract, or the S part, should be the investment into the employees, whether this is employee reskilling, as people need to develop. This is not your traditional training or teaching you how to do the job. This is taking a much longer-term view on the people being employed by the business, looking at reskilling, looking at meaningful career evolution, meaningful growth paths. The third part is actually living the diversity and inclusion inside the organization. Many companies, all the companies, they pay lip service to this. We are a diverse organization, we promote equality, whatnot, but they need to put together the framework and the tools that will allow them to do this. The fourth thing is part of the social contract, I think, but it's more also around creating products that matter, and they reflect some of the social sensitivities and the social responsibilities. The fifth element of this social contract has to do with improving the community. So we need to be able to track the net jobs that are being created along the supply chain, making sure that our suppliers, our clients, they play along. And then finally, the last thing, and I'll close with this, Anthony, is companies need to move from this notion of brands to stands. I know it sounds almost gimmicky, but in a way, consumers do value what companies stand for. And as we see the generations shifting, we see that Gen Z consumers, particularly the ones with a very high spend, they will not buy a product, 50% of them actually, will not buy a product that they feel is not aligned with their values, or it's creating a negative impact in the environment. So very much on the effort, I think we do need something that will bring the S part of the ESG, the social part, up to the forefront, and the companies need to shape it along these 4 or 5 dimensions that I just mentioned.
Let me start with the key issue, inequality. Yes, true, it's the main issue of the coming decades. It's not new, but be aware of misconceptions and misperceptions. We are now at the second phase of the globalization. We have to realize that during this phase, there are impacts, positive and negative, on inequalities. There is inequality between countries, nations, and inequality within. From this second wave of globalization, many segments of societies have benefited, but there are also the losers. So, okay, the key objective is to fight inequality, but there are different ways. And the positive thing, the positive approach we have to support with this charter is that this is the alternative democratic way of dealing with inequalities. It refers to commitments, but there is a key idea. Rule of law, one is this. The other one has to do with education. And the responsibility we have as business sectors and societies to deal with inequalities by using this alternative way. In this case, less is more. We can move faster, as Anthony underlined, by simplifying for businesses and simplifying for governments, and give priority to the key indicators and the key aspects.
At this stage, you can say that, okay, we disagree, or where we disagree, or anything. Here's Mr. Rio.
I think that what the Athenian Charter is trying to do is trying to talk about another way of thinking about the economy. I would say that probably you would rather say the 4 Ps, as I call them. We had back 25, 30 years ago, we had the 3 Ps. We had people, we had profit, we had planet. Now I think that we should go forward and talk about the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose instead of profit, and prosperity. A very interesting press release from the Institute of Economic Affairs, July 6, 2021. 2,000 people in UK, aged between 16 and 34 years old. Listen to this. 65% say they would like to live in a socialist economic system. 75% agree with the assertion that the climate change is specifically a capitalist problem. 78% blame capitalism for Britain's housing crisis. 72% support the renationalization of various industries such as energy. And 75% agree with the statement that socialism is a good idea and it has positive terms such as workers, public, equal, fair. We should try and think and accept this challenge and not to pretend that it is not happening. We should change our mindset, we should change the way we see things, and how especially the young people are facing what they are living now.
The question of equality in a business is a more difficult question than it is in a government or a nation state. So how do you really, as a business, treat people, your employees, fairly? You could go to the cooperative model, which works, but are founders and owners of businesses prepared to share their capital with their employees? I think that's a critical question in terms of how one wants to really treat workers fairly.
The question for me, and regarding the Athenian Charter, is what can we offer that is not there? And in my opinion, what is missing is more connections to everything else. As it was mentioned earlier, there's no going back to business as usual. So we cannot be here just businesses or foundations. We need to go out there and find ways how to connect this to academia, to cities, to civil society, where I come from, and make it simple, as you say, perhaps by helping those that don't have all these metrics on how to take this to their everyday tasks.
First of all, we've mentioned a number of really huge issues that demonstrate that businesses are more and more aware that they are part of a solution as well as of a problem. So that's not a separate sector. And I think that's a really important thing, because I think we've often underestimated the power of division when we talked about the state sector, the private sector, or the social sector. So I think that all of us are ready to work in a different way at the moment, and there is a demand for that. So as we are looking towards an acceleration that we have to deliver, what is the thinking around that, and what can different actors like ourselves can do in order to help advance that conversation? Thank you.
I think the charter should mean something for each business that subscribes, as we said, but it should, and I think we heard this in a number of comments by now, mean something collectively for all of those that subscribe. What sort of alliances does it create? I think, again, that was mentioned, and I very much agree with it. And how, in practical ways, it can bring the positive impact that we wanted to bring.
I think these were fantastic questions and great points to raise. Just going back to that survey, which I actually found it very, very interesting. I hadn't seen it, but I think it kind of reflects a more general trend that we see globally, which is people are just disappointed with what I called before the social contract. They say, well, they're working for the big business, there's lots of inequality, the wealth is actually being distributed in a very different way. You know, the rich are getting richer. I don't have access to the things I used to have, so I'm longing for a different setting where it's more social, where, you know, somebody else is taking care of me. And I think this is exactly also the danger for business. I mean, let's be clear, right? I mean, businesses and corporations, you know, their purpose is to make money for their shareholders. But there is a win-win situation. And the question is, how can the businesses, I go back to what I said before, how can the businesses be part of the social contract? What are the things that they can do to address some of the, you know, some of these concerns and the popular feelings that are being reflected in these surveys? And that's why, again, going back to the Athenian Charter, the first paragraph of the Athenian Charter is about the purpose. You'd be surprised how many companies globally cannot answer the why. Why am I here beyond, you know, to return my 10% or 15% or 20% ROE? But in our why we're here, and this can be a difficult conversation within a company, we need to also include, as part of our why, this part of the social contract.
Now, what we need is a 21st century societal approach with all the four big challenges: migration, climate crisis now, and the transitions, the digital one. Rethinking everything is what we need. Okay, we can rethink everything, but it's rather difficult to implement everything in a different way. The only way to not to be left behind is to focus on the basics. Okay, with profit, but there are also other aspects of the purpose for business, and this is ethics.
The first thing that needs to be done is really something very important, and this is to change the state of mind of the business community to move away from short-term profits. So, as I said, inequality as a primary objective, overriding everything else. Number two, move away from short-termism. And number three, there is nowhere the need for the companies to integrate the intergenerational discussion. Look, we are faced with a situation which we failed to understand up till now. The new generation no longer trusts us. And, you know, if we don't wake up to this, we're really walking around blindfolded. We've got to reestablish a different dialogue with the younger generation. We've got to listen to them. It is a question of ethics. This is why the Charter is presented as a set of ethics. Use all means to mobilize public opinion, to press business to change its ways. It is for its own benefit because it is possible for business to be profitable and to have a social impact at the same time.